I want to thank you for downloading or streaming this message from Victory. We believe that the starting point for real life change is centered around God's Word lived out with God's people. So no matter who you are or where you are or what you're struggling with, our goal is to inspire and equip you with a new perspective that will give you a better way to do life. And we pray that as you live out God's Word, you will truly experience something more, something better. And if you haven't experienced a live Victory service yet, we invite you to visit victorycc.life for more information on when and where you can join us. No matter where you are in the world, you can tune in with us through Victory Everywhere. That's what we're calling our online campus, Victory Everywhere. Or if you're local, we'd love to have you join us here in person. Here at Victory, we're contributors, not just consumers, and we consider it a privilege to give back what God has so freely given us. We celebrate generosity and the work that God does with our sacrificial giving and in our community and around the world. If the message that you are about to hear helps you, inspires you, and challenges you in any way, we invite you to partner with us financially in our vision of connecting people back to God. Join us by going to victorycc.life/give. Thank you again for watching. We hope you enjoy this message. Welcome to Wreck the Halls, and for the last few weeks we've looked at how Jesus has wrecked a traditional view of religion, how he's wrecked a traditional view of society, and then when you actually go back and look at the first followers of Jesus and examine how they lived out their lives along with Jesus' teaching, you discover that when you really follow Jesus, he will wreck what we think about when we think about Christmas. Because the message of Jesus and the mission of Jesus turns all of our assumptions about God and life and everything else upside down. And now, so today, I just want to start off our time together with a life-changing question. So whether you follow Jesus or not, it's a question that I would like to ask you. And it was a question that was asked to me the last time I got pulled over for speeding. It was simply this: where are you going? Or the way the officer said it: son, where are you going driving so fast? Is there a fire? Like, are you headed to the hospital? Where are you going? And I don't know what life is like for you, but for me, I'm in this crazy stage of life where everything just seems so fast-paced. Everything seems so busy. Even though the world's like in lockdown or quarantine, like with the kids and Christmas and family and deadlines, just time is moving so quick and life seems to be just a breath. I always seem to be going somewhere. And so this Christmas season, I just want you to pause and ask yourself, where are you going? If I were to bump into you at a coffee shop, and this is what I'd say to you: hey, it's so great to actually see you, right? How's the fam? But I'd eventually ask you, where are you going? And what would you say to me? And maybe you're like, hey, I'm just here grabbing some coffee, but then I'm going to be heading off to work, to which I say, no. Where are you going? To which you might say, nowhere. Everything is shut down. Our county is on red. That's why I'm wearing pajamas to a coffee shop. But I'm annoying. I don't let up. I just go, no. Like, where are you going? To which you might think, okay, Josh, like, what are you talking about? Like, this week or this weekend? Like, I plan to safely go visit family, or I have to work, or there's a tournament that my kids are going to be in. To which I go, like, no. Like, where are you going? To which you finally go, okay, well, like, you mean generally in life? Well, you might say, well, I've been accepted to a college, so I'm headed that way. Or I've been praying for a promotion, or I've been hoping that God would bring me more opportunity and more resources. But I lean into you and finally say, no. Like, where really are you going? To which you might say, okay, well, you know what? I'm just praying for the future. I'm praying for my kids to graduate, or I'm praying for grandkids. To which I say, no. Where are you going? Well, I guess like we're praying that we get to retire in good health and move to Florida. But if I were to go to Florida and visit you, do you know what I would ask you? Where are you going? To which you say, now I just got here. I'm setting up the house. I just retired. Leave me alone. So I say, I'll come back next year. And if I came back next year, you know what I would ask you? Where are you going? To which you say, I don't know. Like, I think I'm there. Where are you going? It seems like a simple question, but I think so many of us live life without ultimately considering where we are going. And so much of our culture teaches us that where we are headed should be oriented around or centered around a career. And while that's not necessarily a bad thing, but this question, where are you going? It's like okay, so maybe I'm going to become a doctor, to which you say, now what? Well, then I'm going to open up more practices. So, okay, so you open up more practices, so where are you going? Well, I'm going to work hard for 15 more years and then I'm going to retire. Okay, but really, ultimately, where are you going? See, the tendency in our life is to focus on the holiday in front of us, the problems in front of us, the challenges in front of us, the dysfunction that's right there in front of us. And you and I seem to be working so hard just to get through the holidays or just to get the kids to practice. We're working hard to meet the deadlines, or we're working hard to put dinner on the table that everyone will eat. Like that will ever happen. But we get so focused on what's right in front of us that we so often miss the larger perspective, because life can feel cryptic. And if 2020 has taught us anything, life is going to throw you some curveballs. And many of us, if we're honest, we really don't know where we are going. Am I headed towards a career? Am I headed towards a relationship? Am I headed off a cliff? I don't know. So when we're asked, where are you going? Many of us, we just don't know. And it doesn't really matter who you are or what you believe. That sense of confusion can affect our daily life. It can affect our quality of life. In fact, if you don't really know where you're going, let's just be transparent. It messes with you. Or worse, right? You could arrive. You could get to where you're going and think, oh no, what have I done? I am where I'm going and I don't know what to do next. So this Christmas, I think you just need to know that Jesus wants to wreck our view of our life. Jesus wants to give you assurances about who you are and where you're going and what you can do if you actually follow him. You see, when you and I just wander around and unsure about where we're going, it causes us to see life differently. That when we don't understand as our life is connected, all of our life becomes a succession of different decisions that are completely unrelated to each other. And most of the time, most of us actually see our life as disconnected. The decisions or the opportunities that are in front of us, they feel random. And because we don't see our life as going anywhere, because we don't necessarily see our life as connected to anything or anyone else, if we look around the world around us and music or movies or entertainment, like all things that I enjoy, the overwhelming message from the world is simply this: do what you want, when you want, with whoever you want. Right? That's the message. So whatever your impulse is, Nike would tell you what, just do it. Who cares? YOLO. You only live once, right? So do what you want, when you want, with whoever you want. That's the message. And if pressed, actually many Jesus followers would say, I kind of do that, right? I know what Jesus says about that, but while I think other people should listen and follow Jesus, my situation is just a little bit different. Everyone's buying this message. And here's the problem. If that mindset actually improved our quality of life, if that actually improved our well-being, you know what you would see all around you? Well-rounded, well-adjusted, non-dysfunctional people every place you went, right? But this Christmas season, you just don't have to look very far to realize that hasn't worked. No, that mindset is destroying us. It's ripping apart our families. It's ripping apart our careers. It's ripping apart our very souls. And I'm tired of watching it happen to me, and I'm tired of watching it happen to the people that I care about. And we all have this in common, that we've all been affected by someone else's bad decisions. And because our life is connected. And here's the deal. Just because you can't see the connection does not mean that our life is not connected. I mean, this Christmas, I think someone needs to hear that just because you can't see it, just because you can't put your eyes on it, it does not mean that it's not real. My life and your life is connected. And you might not think about but think about it this way. You can't see taste, but you know it's real. You can't see electricity, but you know it's real. Or radio waves or Wi-Fi, but you know that it's real. Just this last month, just to freak out the neighbors, I changed our Wi-Fi password to FBI surveillance van. Like, no joke. Yeah, you should have seen our neighbors looking out the window. It was hilarious. But here's the deal. If you struggle to believe that God is involved in our lives just because you can't see it, just because you can't see the connection, I understand that. Now, I get it. In fact, some of the very first followers of Jesus, they were living in modern day Turkey right over here, right? And they would raise up their hand and they'd say, "Me too. You're not alone." In fact, all these little dots are established churches in the first century. So that's what was the established churches in the first century. And around 47 AD, Paul and Barnabas went to what was known then as Galatia, right, in that area to tell them about how the life-changing message of Jesus had wrecked their lives, broken apart their lives. And you could read all about that maybe later on this week in Acts chapter 16. But just 2 years after hearing this gospel message, just 2 years after experiencing life change, a lot can happen in 2 years. The Jesus followers all over Galatia are questioning their faith. They're questioning their life. They're questioning everything else. And so Paul sent them a letter that we call Galatians. And in Galatians chapter 1, he starts off this way. He says, "This letter is from Paul, an apostle. I was not appointed by any group of people or any human authority, but by Jesus Christ himself and by God the Father who raised Jesus from the dead." So he wants them to know right out of the gate, all of my authority comes from the God who wrecked religion, the God who wrecked society as we know it. And my worth and my value and my authority and my connection back to God isn't built on a book, a teaching, a set of rules to follow, but an event, the nail-scarred, resurrected feet of Jesus. And he continues, he says, "All the brothers and sisters here join me in sending this letter to the churches of Galatia." Now, when he says the churches of Galatia, what he's doing is he's sending a circular letter that was going to be passed from church to church to church, right, to travel to all of the churches in Galatia. In an area, the Galatia was an area just a little bit larger than the state of Indiana. And you'd have these congregations in these ancient cities of Iconium and Lystra and Derbe and all the way over here in Syria by Antioch. And Paul is reminding them of what we celebrate when we celebrate Christmas, that God planned a rescue mission. In fact, he says this. He says, "May the God the Father and our Lord Jesus Christ give you grace and peace. Jesus gave his life for our sins, just as God the Father planned, in order to rescue us from the evil world in which we live. All glory to God forever and ever. Amen." So because of that, he goes, I am shocked that you're turning away so soon from God. And in other words, Paul is talking to people who used to follow Jesus, but just after 2 years of difficulty, after 2 years of struggle, after 2 years of living for Jesus when it wasn't easy, right? They were in the middle of their faith. Like way back in the beginning of their faith, it was exciting. Back in the beginning of their faith, they felt close to God, but now they're 2 years in and they're in the middle. And from the middle, it's hard to see where things are headed. When you're in the middle of something, you can't say with any certainty or any confidence that you're going to get your life where you intended it to go, right? So if you've ever felt that way, these first followers of Jesus, they would just say, "Me too. You're not alone. I know exactly what it feels like to be right in the middle." So Paul writes them a letter and says basically this: "Hey, where are you going? It looks like you're walking away. Where are you going? It looks like you're giving up. Where are you going?" Hey, this is how he says it. "I am shocked that you're turning away from God so soon." Right? So the God who called you himself through the loving mercy of Christ, you are following a different way that pretends to be the good news, but is not the good news at all. So where are you going? Why are you going your own way? Why are you going a different way? See, I know life is coming at you, but I don't want you to forget who you are. So, church, where are you going? See, he goes back to say, Jesus gave his life for our sins, just as God the Father had planned in order to rescue us. See, if you follow Jesus, you already know this, that your life is not your own, that you were bought, that you were purchased, that Jesus wrecked your plans because you surrendered your control over to him. And I know you can't see what's ahead. And I know you don't know what challenges you might face next. I know this has been a difficult year. I know we all, and I also know this, we all love the excitement of the beginning. We love the brand new feelings at the very beginning, like the first time she says yes, or the smell of a brand new car. Like we all love the beginnings, and we all love a great ending. The ending of a good book or a good movie. We love that feeling of accomplishment, to see how everything in life just finally comes together. But if we're honest, many of us hate the middle. We despise the middle. That's why the middle seat on an airplane is terrible, right? Because many times in the middle, we forget where we're going. We forget where we were headed to begin with. And that's why in chapter 4 of this letter, Paul tells his version of the Christmas story. So these people who are first following Jesus, they're turning away. They're going a different way. And Paul speaks up and he says, don't give up on God in the middle of your story. Don't mistake God's silence as his absence. Just because you can't see it working doesn't mean that he isn't working. He challenges them to remember what was like the last time their life was dark. The last time they couldn't see God's movement in their life at all. The last time, right before Jesus came to give them some Christmas light. See, God's people were in the middle when it didn't look like God was working, and it didn't look like that God was moving. It felt like God was absent. And Paul reminds them that when the set time had fully come. Now, what Paul is pointing to when he says that word set time is what happened historically, and it's something that happened culturally. That when the set time had fully come, once God had completely orchestrated a universal language known as Greek, and so that everyone could understand the life-changing message of Jesus, when the set time had fully come, when God orchestrated the first century superhighway, where it's called the Roman roads, where these roads were traveled all throughout the known world. And when the set time had fully come, once God had finally orchestrated what we call the Pax Romana, meaning Roman peace, that gave the Jesus followers the ability to travel from country to country to country to country without getting attacked. When the set time had fully come, even though it felt like God was absent, God was definitely silent, but you could see God moving all throughout history and all throughout culture when you finally step back. That God was moving. Why? Because you find that because life is connected. But because we're so focused on what's right in front of us, when we're so focused on the story right in front of us, when we're in the middle of what's going on in our life, we don't always see it. And Paul says, don't give up. Because God sent Jesus on a rescue mission. When the set time had fully come, God sent his son, born of a woman, born under the law, to redeem, meaning to buy back, to redeem those under the law. So don't turn away so soon. Don't go that different way. Remember who you are. Your life is not your own, that you were bought, that you were purchased, that you were redeemed. So where are you going? And this is something that the first followers of Jesus, they tended to struggle with understanding, because Paul makes this a common theme all throughout this particular letter. Because back in chapter 2, he told them that if you follow Jesus, it will wreck your life, because, check out how he says it, my old self has been what? Crucified with Christ. So what he's saying, if you follow Jesus, your old self has been nailed to a cross. Your old self died. Your old life was wrecked. So where are you going? Why would you ever go back to what was dead? My old self has been crucified with Christ. So it is no longer I who live, but Christ lives in me. And so Paul says, just like Jesus came up out of the grave with this new life, you came up out of the waters of baptism with this new life in Christ. So it's no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. And so this Christmas, my challenge for you is don't just live your life for Jesus. Allow Jesus to live in you. Don't just live your life for Jesus, but allow Jesus to live in you. This Christmas, don't forget to remember that your past is not your identity. Your struggle is not your identity. Your worst trait or your greatest accomplishment is not your old identity. Your old self died. Your old life was wrecked. So it's no longer Christ, or no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. So where are you going? Why would you ever go back to what was dead? And now I read that. I have a question in my head. My question is simply this. When these first followers of Jesus were turning away from God, why does he remind them of their identity? When these first followers of Jesus were turning away from God, why does Paul remind them of their identity? And I believe that the reason for that is most of our struggles in this life and with our faith and with everything else, it comes from our identity issues. I mean, even if you decide to never follow Jesus, you've probably experienced someone who was chasing down acceptance, right? Chasing down, placing their self-worth and their identity in life choices and life paths that were ultimately crushing to them. Because God designed you and I in such a way that nothing in this world is able to hold the power and the weight of our identity. And here's how you've experienced it. When you were younger, maybe you based your identity in sports or in grades, and you did everything you could to get the A. You trained as hard as you could, but the minute you couldn't be the best on the team, the minute you didn't run fast enough, jump high enough, the minute you weren't smart enough, the minute you were not the best at your position, our world just came crashing down. Why was that? And we felt that crushing defeat. Why? Because you don't know who you are if you're not that anymore. Well, the reason that is because nothing in this world can hold the power and the weight of our identity. And maybe your work has been your identity, and you work until you hit that glass ceiling. And then you begin to question everything you thought about who you are. Or maybe it's worse than that. You actually conquered your field and you poured your life into something, and you look back and you realize it was worth nothing. If my life came crashing down, my whole goals, it didn't matter at all, right? Because nothing in this world can hold the power or the weight of our identity. Our identity is crushing if it's left all by ourselves. Now, maybe this is true for some of the moms. Maybe your family is your identity. That every movement that they make is a reflection of you. And you begin to micromanage the details of their life. And their successes and their failures, they become so crushing because they become your own. And so you stay up late at night, or you worry at night about things that might happen, could happen in their lives. And that is crushing to you. It's crushing to your kids. Why? Because nothing in this world has the ability to hold the power and the weight of your identity. Absolutely nothing. In fact, it's actually true for people who don't seem to care about anything in this life. The people who just live for a good time, that their whole lives are centered around the next vacation or next Friday. And what they're searching for is a short-term fix. And what happens is there comes a point in their life where their lifestyle spirals out of control. And when that happens, it's crushing. Why is that? Because nothing in this life has the power to hold the power, or has the power to hold the weight of your identity. Absolutely nothing. And that's why Paul asked the Galatians and us today, where are you going? Right? Jesus came to rescue us from all of that. So don't go back to what was dead. Where are you going? You already know that doesn't work. Where are you going? And so when these first followers of Jesus were turning away from God, why does he remind them of their identity? Well, because the only way that we can have lasting love and lasting joy and lasting peace is when we actually center our lives on Christ. When we put our lives in Jesus, right? That we center our lives on the identity that Jesus died for. So that we can say, it's no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. And once we know who we are, once we center our life on that, right? Life can happen. Things can come our way. But our life can still hold up. Our standing with God, and trouble can come, right? But once we know our worth and our value, pressure can come, but we can hold up underneath that pressure because we center our life on the identity that Christ has given us, that he can hold us and he can sustain all things. Now, let me warn you, when you give your life to Christ, he will wreck your life, and he will wreck your plans, and he will wreck the purpose that you thought you had. It will wreck how you respond to the world around you, right? But that identity is no longer crushing anymore. Your whole life doesn't fall apart. You can stand the difficulty in life because you centered your identity on Jesus. So where are you going? Why are you turning away from God so soon? Why are you contemplating going a different way? See, I know that 2020 has been a difficult year. It has been crushing for many who are isolated or depressed or on edge, and we don't know what'll happen next. We can't see how life is connected. We are right in the middle of our story. But what we think about when we think about Christmas is when the set time had fully come. When the set time had fully come, when God had prepared everything, when he was moving even when you couldn't see it, God sent his son, born of a woman, born under the law, to redeem those under the law, that we might receive adoption to sonship. Basically saying, Jesus paid the price to buy us a new life. Jesus paid the price to give us a new life and a new identity, one that would never crush us again. Now, if you follow Jesus long enough, here's what you'll get. You have people ask these questions, like I get asked all the time, like, what did Jesus say about, or what does the Bible say about a particular topic, right? And they normally say it with some kind of cynical tone. And most of the time when people ask me, hey, Josh, what does the Bible say about it? Normally it's to justify something that they're wrestling with in their life. And they want to know what Jesus says about it. But because if Jesus says anything different than what they want to believe, or something different than what they feel is true, then they go, I'm out. If Jesus disagrees with me or my behavior, or if he's judgmental towards me in any way, I don't want anything to do with anything he has to offer. So I get to ask this all the time. What does Jesus say about this, right? And normally, when it comes to this particular thing, it's like, what does Jesus say about sex, right? And it could be someone saying, hey, I think I'm wired this way, or I don't want to be married to this person anymore, or that I made a commitment to, or I'm not married, but I would really like to enjoy sex. So what does Jesus say about that? And I just want to sleep around a little bit, regardless of what God says, what's best for me. So I know what I think, but what does Jesus say about that? And when people ask me about that, I'm telling you the truth. The Bible gives us lots of direction in that particular area. We can talk about that all day long if you want. Josh, what does the Bible say about me? Fill in the blank, right? But they're asking the wrong question. See, the question that I have back for them, or maybe back for you, is basically this: who does Jesus say you are? Who does Jesus say you are? See, we could debate all day about our own wants, our own needs, our own desires, what we think should happen, right? But what does Jesus say about that? We can argue all day, but who does Jesus say you are? You see, so when you have a problem or when you have a struggle, the first question is back to you is, what is your identity? Now, I want you to think about that for a minute. If I were to meet you for the very first time, how would you introduce yourself, right? What would you align yourself with? What is your identity? We first meet, and I tell you, hey, tell me a little bit about yourself. What would you say? Would you say, I'm a hunter, or I'm a teacher, or I'm a parent, I'm a fast food worker, I'm a CEO, I'm a mom, I'm a dad? Like, what would you say? And it doesn't matter if you follow Jesus or not. This is a principle in life that you either understand or you wreck your life up against. And you will see your life through the lens of identity. It's basically like putting on glasses. In fact, I actually need glasses. I struggle seeing things at a distance. And every morning, my wife and I, we get up and we walk. And I'm going to walk with her, and she'll say this to me all the time. Hey, honey, did you see that over there? And almost never do I have my glasses on. So I say this annoying thing every time. I didn't see it. It's blurry. And when it comes to our identity, could we have blurry vision? Could we have not put on our glasses? Could it be that we need something to help correct our vision so that we could see our life and everything else more clearly through the lens of the identity that Jesus gave us? And so if I were to meet you for the very first time, like, how would you introduce yourself? Is it I'm black, I'm white, I'm a woman, I'm a husband, I'm a mom, I'm a student, I'm an athlete, I'm a Democrat, I'm a Republican? Or is your identity first? Is the lens that you see everything else through that I am a child of God? See, my identity personally cannot be minister, it cannot be husband, it cannot be dad, it cannot be son, it can't even be friend. My identity has to be first child of God. Because if I get that right, everything in my life holds up. It affects everything else in your life once you correctly get your identity right. It affects how you spend your time or what you spend your money on or how you live or how you forgive or what you sacrifice for or how you care for the community or how you vote or how you stand for all life, how you become anti-racist, how you stand up for every single beating heart. See, your identity is not wrapped in your career, and your identity is not wrapped up in your sexuality, and your identity is not wrapped up in how you feel, and your identity is not in your past, and your identity is not in your current struggle. If you're a Jesus follower, you have to admit that you can't save yourself and you can't fix yourself. You have to admit that I am totally dependent on Christ to forgive, save, and fix everything broken in my life. Without Him, my life would fall apart. See, if you want life-wrecking clarity on all of life's decisions, the question is not, what does Jesus say about that? No, it's this question: who does Jesus say you are? Who does Jesus say you are? Paul said, where are you going? Because at the set time, and when the set time had fully come, God had sent His Son, born of a woman, born under the law, to redeem those under the law, that we might receive adoption to sonship. That we might receive this invitation that you and I are becoming children of God. So don't run away. You've been adopted. Jesus has wrecked your old life. Jesus has crucified your old life. Your identity is not your worst trait or your greatest accomplishment. Your identity has nothing to do with your bank account, your reputation, your Instagram followers, or your latest TikTok craze, right? Your identity does not come from the people who accept you. Your identity comes from the only one who died for you, Jesus. So where are you going? You've been adopted. And you might say, Josh, okay, that's great. I'm adopted, but what kind of father is He? Well, I'll tell you this, he's not the reflection of your father and all the baggage that you might have with your dad, even if he was a really good dad. No, God is a perfect, loving, heavenly Father. The Jesus life shows us the kind of relationship that God wants to have with us. And 2 times in the Bible where the Father actually talks audibly to Jesus, and one was before He begins His ministry at His baptism, and the other is before He goes to Jerusalem so that He can be executed. And remember, Jesus, He took on our humanity. He struggled like we struggle. And before Jesus started His ministry, and in the middle of Jesus' great difficulty, God reassured the humanity of Jesus with this message: this is my dearly loved Son, who brings me great joy. 2 different verses, 2 different times, God says the exact same thing. This is my dearly loved Son, who brings me great joy. This is who are you? What's going on? Oh, this is my dearly loved Son. He brings me great joy. Now think about this. What's the Father saying? He's not saying, here's what you need to do to earn my favor. He's telling them, this is who you are. So this Christmas, where are you going? Where are you going? If you follow Jesus, we're called to be more committed to what's ahead of us than what's behind us. And now, that isn't true unless you follow Jesus. But if you follow Jesus, you're called to be more committed to what's ahead of us than what's behind us, right? So where are you going? Forget what's behind and strain towards what's ahead, because the best is yet to come. We need to center our life and center our identity on Jesus. He died so that we can be connected back to Him. So don't just live your life for Jesus. Allow Jesus to live in you. Why? Because it's no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. To which you might say, Josh, how does Jesus live in me? What does that even look like? Well, back in Genesis, it says when God created the very first person, God took the dust up out and dirt from the ground, and He shaped it, and He breathed into it, and that dust, that dirt became man. And the Hebrew word for ground is Adam. And the very first person that God created was who? Adam, right? We come from the dust. Our lives are but a vapor. And when we die, we return to the dust. This time on earth is short. Each person's life is but a breath. And you know that. If you've ever walked the floors of a hospital or stood over a casket or held a newborn baby, you know exactly what I'm talking about. How fragile life is, that God breathed His divine breath into every single fragile human being who's ever existed. I just want you to pause right now and just take in a big, deep breath. each day, we take about 26,000 breaths, which is around 1,400 liters of air. On average, most of us take 16 to 20 breaths a minute. The experts say that from our breathing, you and I could get 99% of our energy, but most of us only access 10 to 20% of that energy. With all we have in life going on every single day, who actually pauses long enough to think about our breathing? See, this Hebrew word breath can be referring to breath or wind or something invisible, some invisible moving force. But in the Old Testament, God gives us his name. And if you are reading it in the English, it's spelled like this: capital L, capital O, capital R, capital D. That's the Lord. And the Lord's name appears in the Bible over 6,000 times. It's God's personal, all-powerful, holy name. But in Hebrew, it's only written using 4 letters, right? They wouldn't even write the vowels down out of reverence for God. And we would actually say it this way: capital Y, capital H, capital W, capital H. But the letters are pronounced Yod, He, Va, He. Yod, He, Va, He. Now, some pronounce it Yahweh or Yahweh, but in many traditions, the name isn't even pronounced because it's considered so sacred, so mysterious, so holy, so other. In fact, the ancient rabbis believed that the name of God was like the sound of breathing. Yod, He, Va, He. It made me think, could our very breath be a reminder of God? In over 1,000 years, many scholars believe that the physical breath we possess is actually a picture of a deeper spiritual reality. There's some invisible moving force or spirit. All right, that's what the Hebrew word implies. And the very first Christians, they were taught that the moment you were baptized, that the Spirit of God actually entered you. That the Spirit of God lives inside of you. And for the Jesus followers, here's what we know: is breathing is a spiritual reminder that when you breathe, you let God in. When you breathe in, we breathe in what we need. And when we breathe out, God takes out all the carbon dioxide and he cleans us out. And breathing is a spiritual reminder that when you breathe and when you let God in, you become aware of everything you need to leave behind, everything you need to let go of. And if you're totally honest about what you're facing this Christmas, if you're totally honest about what was inside of you right now, what are you angry about? What are you concerned about? What are you anxious about? What is bothering you? What's filling up your mind? What's emptying your heart? If you're totally honest about what's going on in your life right now, is there anything that you and I need to breathe out this Christmas? If you're totally honest, what's going on inside of you right now? Is there anything that you need to breathe out? See, when a baby is born, what's the very first thing that the baby must do, or the baby isn't going to make it? Does the baby have to take a breath or say the name of God? And what's the last thing you do before you die? Is it take your last breath, or is it that when we can no longer say the name of God, we die? See, Jesus followers, we were crucified. Our old life is gone. We died. And so now it is no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. Don't just live your life for Jesus. Allow Jesus to live in you. See, the world does not need some more camouflaged Christians. It needs hope and light. And this Christmas, the question is simply this: where are you going? Will you allow the message of Jesus and the missions of Jesus to wreck your life? Right? As you struggle with what's in front of you, what if we just stopped? And what if we just took a deep breath and reminded ourselves that we've been adopted? What if every day this week we simply reminded ourselves of who we are and where we are going? And what if we just said over our lives that this is my dearly loved Son who brings me great joy? What if we saw our identity and all of our life through that lens? So I say, God, I know it's Monday. And I hate Mondays, but I'm going to breathe in and remember, I'm your son and you love me and I bring you great joy. God, it's Tuesday. I messed up on Monday and I don't know why you love me, but I know that you love me. You paid the price to connect me back to you. So I'm just going to breathe all of that junk out and I'm going to breathe in and I'm going to remember that I'm your son and that you love me and that you bring me great joy. God, it's Wednesday. I know it's hump day out there, right? We're halfway through the week, and so I'm just going to breathe in this reminder that I am your son, right? That you love me, and I bring you great joy. I'm going to put that lens on. I'm going to look through life that way. God, it's Thursday. Honestly, I'm not feeling it today. I'm not feeling close to you today. My spirit seems to be dried up today, but I'm going to exhale all of that. I'm going to breathe in, I'm your son, and you love me, and you bring me great joy. Or God, it's Friday, and I know I love Friday. Help me to remember this Friday who I am and where I'm going. Help me to filter all of my decisions through that lens, that I'm your son, and that you love me, and I bring you great joy. Yod, hey, va, hey, Yod, hey, va, hey. So where are you going this Christmas? See, allow the breath of God to guide you, because God is here. God is with us. God is guiding us. God is empowering us. When the set time had fully come, God sent his son, born of a woman, born under the law, to redeem those under the law, that we might receive adoption to sonship. Right? That is good news. You are a child of God. I am a child of God. We bring him great joy. What if that was the message, the anthem over our life this week? I'm a child of God, and I bring him great joy. I'm a child of God, and I bring him great joy. May we breathe that in this week. Would you pray with me? Father, help us to center our lives knowing that we are a child of yours. That our identity is firmly established in you. Father, if our life is crushing in any way, help us to get the lens and be able to see ourselves more clearly, see who we are and who you called us to be. And Father, may we take steps that follow you. May we examine our lives this week to see where we really are going. And may we be different. May we be changed because we're breathing in the very name of God this week. It's in Jesus' name I pray. Amen. I don't know where your next step is, but I know every single one of us has a next step. And if you'd like to start a conversation with us, we'd love to have that conversation with you. It's 317-576-2288. Just text that number, and we'd love to have that conversation. For so many, maybe it's encouragement this week, or it's prayer for something this week, or maybe, just maybe, you need to breathe in the Spirit of God, receive the Spirit of God in the waters of baptism this week. No matter where you're at or who you are, if you'd like to take that step, please don't hesitate and shoot us out a text right now. Remember, here at Victory, we don't just go to church. We are the church everywhere we go. Even though the church building is shut down, we are not shut down. The church is active, it's moving, just like the very breath of God. Have a great week.